That is 72-year-old Danny Smith, former Pittsburgh Steelers special teams coordinator, now special teams coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, getting his workout in with the rest of those Pittsburgh Steelers players there. The Buccaneers, Todd Bowles hired 2 coordinators to his staff. Let's talk about those hires right now. Let's get into it. Bucs fans, my Fear the Bay Gunners, welcome back to another episode of Fear the Bay. I'm your host, Daniel Morales. And from the last time we talked, we know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers retained Todd Bowles as head coach, and they moved on from 2 coordinators. Josh Grizzard on the offensive side, that was a one and done in Tampa Bay in terms of the role of offense coordinator, and also Thomas McGahee, special teams coordinator. I'm going to start talking about the special teams hire first, and then we get to the big one, Zack Robinson, next, so stay tuned. But the Buccaneers, they brought in a guy with a wealth of experience, 72-year-old Danny Smith from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we know the Buccaneers had special teams roles the entire season. It started off with Chase McLaughlin's missed kicks, and then it went to Riley Dixon's blocked punts. And throughout the entire season, the Buccaneers, of course, on special teams had an issue with missed tackles. It felt like every time the opposing team returned a kickoff, they were getting around midfield for a good portion of those returns. And the Buccaneers brought in a guy with, of course, a wealth of knowledge. Danny Smith, 72 years old, with 29 years of NFL experience as a special teams coordinator. You couldn't get more, you couldn't get a more experienced coach than this. And how does an experienced coach like that become available? Well, there was a change on the coaching staff in Pittsburgh, of course. Mike Tomlin stepped down as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The next coach likely will want to bring in his own staff. And you see Danny Smith became available, and the Buccaneers pounced on that opportunity. So before I grade out how I feel about this hire, I want to talk about some stats and a real quick fun fact also. So Danny Smith has been around football for such a long time. This is a guy who was coaching at Pittsburgh, but he's moved around the NFL quite a bit. He started off as a Philadelphia Eagles special teams coordinator in 1995, went over to Buffalo afterwards. Detroit was in the middle. He was a tight ends coach, and that was the only time in the NFL that he was not a special teams coordinator, but it only lasted for about a year or two. So Philadelphia to Detroit to the Buffalo Bills, back as a special teams coordinator, then to the Washington Redskins at the time, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he's been since 2013. And again, Mike Tomlin stepping down makes him now available because a new head coach will likely want a brand new staff to go along with him. So when we go through these stats here that I'm going to go over, I'm going to compare the Tampa Bay Buccaneers special teams rankings versus the Pittsburgh Steelers special teams rankings. You're going to see these stats don't blow you out of the water, of course, but I'll explain a little bit more afterwards. So let's start off with average yards per punt. So every time the punter punts a ball out, what is the average yard per punt in terms of rankings when these two teams, you compare each other? The Pittsburgh Steelers, in terms of average yards per punt, they're ranked 25th overall in the NFL. Not too great there. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with Riley Dixon at the helm at punter, and of course Thomas McGahee as a special teams coordinator, who had been his special teams coordinator in the past as well, ranked 31st. So almost basically near the bottom, almost dead last in the league. In terms of field goal percentage made, the Steelers ranked at 20th in terms of field goal percentage made. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ranked 21st. The Steelers have a great kicker in Boswell, and the Buccaneers do as well in McLaughlin. Even though McLaughlin had at times, especially earlier on the season, some missed kicks, some woes himself, the Buccaneers stick with him. I was part of the team where saying, hey, let's make sure I would like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers stay loyal to McLaughlin, and they did. And he was able to correct those issues. They were mostly mental errors. In terms of extra point percentage made, extra points in terms of the Pittsburgh Steelers first, they ranked 11th in the league, so that's really good. The Buccaneers 16th, so middle of the pack. Kickoff return yards. So total kickoff return yards for the Steelers, they ranked 22nd, and for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, ranked 25th. And then total punt return yards for the Steelers, they ranked 16th, and this is the one where the Buccaneers did better. They ranked 12th in terms of punt return yards. So Overall, pretty similar overall in terms of the rankings where both of these special teams units, match up when you put them close to close, right next to each other. But Danny Smith brings of course, like I mentioned before, a wealth of knowledge. He's seen so much football. He's seen everything that an opposing team could throw at him in terms of, from a special team standpoint. He's been around so many great players on special teams as well, especially in Pittsburgh. To me, this is a B- hire. So, like I said before, it's really hard to get a guy with this much experience. But it's a B- for me because this is a very short-term answer at the special teams coordinator position. He's 72 years old. He's much closer to retirement than he is to the beginning of his career, anywhere close to the middle of his career, of course. So this is a very short-term Band-Aid solution for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He'll do good. I would assume he will help improve this special teams unit for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, he'd be around maybe for a year or two, and then he goes off and retires. So this is a very short-term answer, but it's a really good answer in the short term overall because of how knowledgeable he is with special teams and how great of a coach he is. I've seen him high energy at times. He demands a lot from his players as well. So to me, this is a B- hire. I would like to see who his assistant special teams coach will be, because maybe if it's a much younger guy, when Danny Smith decides to retire, the younger assistant special teams coordinator can step into his role. I know the Buccaneers are planning to move on from Keith Tandy. He was the assistant, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer player, of course, safety. But they're planning to move on from him, according to Greg Allman, at the assistant special teams position. And Danny Smith will be allowed to bring in his own guy there. So if it's a young guy, young, promising guy, a guy that Danny Smith trusts and Jason Light and Todd Bowles trust, I think it will be a good hire overall. But Danny Smith is a good hire in the short term. But of course, he is pretty close to retirement age, I would say, overall. So that's Danny Smith, B- for me. Let's get to Zack Robinson, the really big hire that I know all you guys want to talk about. And there's a lot of interesting stats that go along with him. Let's talk about that now. And now for the big hire, it's a hire of Zack Robinson as offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll explain my, my overall rating on this one at the end here. But the Buccaneers went through quite a list of candidates. Mike McDaniel, the former head coach for the Miami Dolphins, he was at the top of my list. If you go back to 2023, I know a lot of people are kind of mixed on him, but if you go back to 2023 and you saw that Miami Dolphins offense just humming, that was the year they went to the playoffs. All the motions, they're purposeful motions with Hill and Waddle and all these guys. He found a way to get these guys open. It wasn't just motion just to move guys around. They were motions to get guys open. It was strategic motions. Beautiful eye candy overall. Short passing game overall. It was just really, really nice stuff. Beautiful football to watch. Mike McDaniel, he's a young, brilliant offensive mind in the NFL. Can he be a head coach? I don't know, because I don't know if he could be a leader, command all those guys. We saw in Miami when times get tough, he wouldn't even look at some of the media members. He would put his face down, when they're going through their losing streak. Is he really a commander of the room? I'm not sure, but he is a really good offensive coordinator candidate. He had a choice, though. He had a choice between the Chargers and the Buccaneers, and he chose the Chargers. He had a choice between Harbaugh and Todd Bowles, and he chose Harbaugh. He had a choice between Justin Herbert and Baker Mayfield, and he chose Justin Herbert. And I'm not angry at that decision. I think I would have, if you give me the choice to pick between Justin Herbert and Baker Mayfield, I'm going to go with Justin Herbert as my guy at quarterback. I just think overall he has a much higher ceiling than Baker Mayfield does. But overall, they're two really good quarterbacks overall when they're healthy. Mike McDaniel, he had the decision, he had the choice. Jeff Darlington, Albert Breer talked about the Buccaneers were definitely players in acquiring him and bringing him to Tampa, but ultimately just, couldn't seal the deal. He chose the Chargers. That it came down to his decision, and he chose the Chargers over the Buccaneers. All right, Todd Monken was another candidate that they brought in for an interview. He's also interviewing for some head coaching opportunities. If he doesn't get one of those head coaching opportunities, the expectation is he will go join Harbaugh, the other Harbaugh, who is a new head coach over with the Giants. Mike Kafka, somebody else that they interviewed as well. He also former backup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, quarterback for Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Kafka, New York Giants offensive coordinator and interim head coach last year. I wasn't a big fan of this one, but they did interview him. He did have play calling experience. Wasn't the decision there. Brian Callahan, the former Tennessee Titans head coach, also spent time with Zach Taylor, of course, in Cincinnati. It's probably going to come down to him and Zack Robinson and also Dan Pitcher, who also is from the Cincinnati Bengals, as the kind of the final three guys, and they chose Zack Robinson. David Shaw, somebody else to interview, Detroit Lions pass game coordinator. Israel Wilfork, who is the Arizona Cardinals offensive quarterback coach. And of course, Zack Robinson. So they interviewed Zack Robinson twice. The first one was on January 11th. It was a virtual interview. Then the second one was January 21st, 10 days later. And that was an in-person interview in Tampa. And according to Ian Rappaport, it was and Greg Allman as well. He was the one who reported first. This was a very long interview. It went on for quite a bit. I remember posting about it really late. It was 10:53 when I posted about it, but a very long interview overall. Once the interview concludes, Zack Robinson heads off to the airport. And then when he's at the airport, he gets a phone call from Todd Bowles, and it's Todd Bowles offering him the position to be the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he accepts, and he goes back from the airport to One Buc Place to work on finalizing that deal and really close the commitment there, to close the agreement. But this is a guy who spent 5 years, Zack Robinson spent 5 years with Sean McVay in LA. In the last episode of Fear the Bay, I talked about with the Buccaneers moving on from Josh Grizzard, ideally you want a guy who has spent some time with Sean McVay in the Rams because of the connection that Baker Mayfield has there, but also the offense was brought over when Liam Cohen was here the year prior in 2024. So, the foundation for a lot of these guys, these are a lot of the same players in offense. They know a good portion of how this Rams offense should run because they ran it under Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen, of course, had his own twists and his own tweaks, but still the core nucleus of Liam Cohen's offense is the Sean McVay offense. And it's the same thing with Zack Robinson. Zack Robinson, 5 years in LA. He was the pass game coordinator for Sean McVay and also the quarterback coach with the Rams. He spent time in 2022 with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had a short stint in LA, and he was his quarterback coach there. Baker Mayfield also was a guy who was banging the table for Zack Robinson. I don't know how much influence Baker Mayfield has, but he did want Zack Robinson in Tampa. And then after the stint with the LA Rams, of course, in 2024, he became the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. So he has 2 years, 2024 and 2025, of play calling experience. This is something that Dave Canales did not have when he came over from Seattle. And it's something also Josh Grizzard didn't have when he got promoted last year to offensive coordinator. With the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, something that Liam Cohen had play calling experience at his time in Kentucky. But it's something that luckily Zack Robinson already has. Now, Zack Robinson definitely is not the perfect candidate, but when you look at the remaining list of candidates that were available once Mike McDaniel decided to go with the LA Chargers, Zack Robinson was the best out of the remaining group. So I fully understand this move. So Zack Robinson, he's a former NFL quarterback. He was drafted out of Oklahoma State in the 7th round in 2022. He has spent time in New England. That was, I believe, for the offseason training camp. He moved in 2010 also to the Seattle Seahawks. In the same year, 2010, he went to the Detroit Lions. There he's bouncing around teams his rookie season. And then in 2011, that's when he signed with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he was with the Cincinnati Bengals from 2011 to 2013. So he's seen football from a quarterback perspective. He was a quarterback coach, of course, with the Rams also. So he's seen it as a player, and now he sees it as a coach, and he got to see it and learn from Sean McVay, of course, probably the best offensive mind in the NFL. So let's look at some of these stats here for the Atlanta Falcons offense. And this is a controversial hire overall, I think. And not like people hate it overall, but it's just like, it's just like, oh, okay, I understand it. I get it, I guess. But the Falcons fans all last year, they were calling for Zack Robinson to be fired. And when you go through, I did a huge deep dive on Zack Robinson. A lot of people were upset with his play calling and his tendencies and all that. We'll talk about that as well as we continue. But the Atlanta Falcons offense last year, they ranked 14th in terms of yards per game. They had 333 yards per game. That's ranked 14th. Not bad overall. It's about the middle of the pack. In terms of points per game, they put up 20.8 points per game, which ranked 24th in the entire NFL. 2.2 touchdowns per game, ranked 23rd in the NFL. In terms of third down conversion rate, this was really bad. Third down is a money down. You need to convert on third downs. With Liam Cohen in 2024, the Buccaneers had a top 5 offense, and they were the best team in the NFL when it came to converting third downs. But with the Zack Robinson offense in Atlanta, third down conversions was 33.33%, which ranked 30th in the league. 2 spots more lower, and you'd be last in the league here. Red zone scoring percentage. So this was really good. So when the Atlanta Falcons offense got in the red zone, how many times did they score touchdowns? They scored touchdowns 62% of the times at the got in the red zone. That's really good. They were the 10th ranked team when it came to red zone scoring percentage. We're looking at purely touchdowns. So really, really good stuff there. When we look at tendencies, offensive tendencies for Zack Robinson, rushing play call. So this was another critique of Zack Robinson when I was doing this huge deep dive on him. A lot of people to say he loves to run. He loves to run a little bit too much. And I understand it. We have a guy like Bijan Robinson, and Tampa is going to have, Bucky Irving and no more Rashad White, and possibly no more Sean Tucker. But you do have Bucky Irving if he's healthy, and the offensive line is healthy as well. You do have a good, rushing attack with him. He's not a workhorse running back. So the thing with Bijan Robinson is he's a complete back. He's a complete offensive weapon. I know going into the 2025 season, Zack Robinson wanted to get Bijan out more as a receiving threat. And you saw this even week 1 against the Buccaneers for the first game of the season, the kickoff. Bijan Robinson was sometimes lined up outside, out wide receiver, sometimes put in the slot. So they're using him kind of Christian McCaffrey, and he's a running back, but he's also a receiving threat. He could hurt you in the air, in the receiving game. He could hurt you on the ground as well. But he ranked 10th in terms of rushing play call percentage. So 45.52% of the play calls that he called in Atlanta in 2025, they were rushing plays. So going to get a very balanced offensive attack where, 10th ranked in terms of the 10th most rushing play calls, for the entire NFL. So he likes to run the ball a lot. You're going to see here so 55% pass plays that he called, 45% rushing play calls that he called here. Now, this is something I don't like at all. 12% play action rate. That ranked 31st in the league. Doesn't utilize play action like I would want an offense coordinator use play action. This was also one of my gripes with Josh Grizzard. If you remember the game, like for example, the first meeting between the Buccaneers and the Panthers in 2025, they were really, really run heavy, but they didn't marry play action off of it. No huddle rate, 11%, which is 5th highest in the entire league. So a lot of no huddle, or a good portion, more than the Buccaneers had in 2025. And then motion rate. So this is something that's good. Motion rate. 67.2 motion rate, which is 2nd highest in the entire league. So there's not a lot of play action, but there is an uptick from Josh Grizzard in terms of no huddle and also motion rate. There's a lot more motion you're going to see with Zack Robinson's offense versus Josh Grizzard. And then final offensive tendency, shotgun formation. There's a lot of shotgun with Atlanta, a lot of pistol with Atlanta, specifically with Michael Penix at the helm. But with the Atlanta Falcons in 2025, the shotgun formation rate was 79.7, which was 4th highest in the entire league. So you're going to get a lot of shotgun. Now, I know they went more drop back, more under the center with Kirk Cousins, but you're going to get likely a lot of shotgun with Zack Robinson's offense this year, and I don't have a problem with that. Now let's get to his offensive philosophy. I want to play a clip from Check the Mic, a 33rd team podcast where he got a chance to talk about his offensive philosophy, and it goes a lot with what we heard from Liam Cohen, players over plays. Let's hear that now.
How much are you saying, hey, we've got Drake against this particular corner, we're going to feed him in a certain way? How do you balance those?
Good. Yeah, I think like 1st and 2nd down is, sometimes it's more scheme heavy, but it's also it's always players driven. Players are always going to drive it, but you kind of know first and second down, typically here's what you're getting. Here's our top 3 or 4 coverages. Here's our top pressures. Here's our top this. And then obviously the third downs, the situational football, like that's definitely predicated on the players, the matchups, all the things that you can get. But players will always take the cake on that. And then obviously it's just depending on the situation. Like I said, third downs, as you guys know, hey, you try to get the ball to the best player out there, and different situations, red zone, all those things that come up. But yeah, it's a good balance to find. But I mean, players over plays is what it's all about. We can, design up whatever we call, but if you don't have the guys to do it, it's not going to work. Same thing. You could have the dumbest play ever called, and you've got a great player, and he makes a great play for you, and you look like a genius, and it's like, that play actually sucked.
I would encourage all of you guys to go listen to that podcast. It's really, really good stuff there provided by Zack Robinson and the host of that podcast. But he talked about his offensive philosophy in that show. He talks about first and second down being really scheme heavy. So it's really about the scheme. Of course, players play into account of that, but the players come into account mostly on third down, situational football, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 2. Third down is the money down. You have to convert it, and that's where players over plays matters most. You want to get the ball in your best player's hands. Third down, you might want to, find a way to get into Chris Godwin's hands or Mike Evans' hands. Find a way to get the ball into your best player's hands. Players over plays, not scheme first, it's players first. And that's the offensive philosophy that comes, of course, from Sean McVay and the Rams. But we saw that in 2024 with Liam Cohen, and it worked. It was really, really good. Now, Zack Robinson is not as good as Liam Cohen is as an offensive play caller, not anywhere close. Can he get there? Can he continue to improve? Yes, possibly. But right now he's nowhere near Liam Cohen is. But he is a step up, definitely, from Josh Grizzard. He's definitely a step up from Josh Grizzard. But he's somewhere in the middle between Liam Cohen and Josh Grizzard, somewhere in the middle. And is he closer to Liam Cohen than I want him to be, or is he lower? Is he closer to Josh Grizzard than I want him to be? We will see. Only time will tell overall. So I wanted to get to a few comments here. So some good and some bad. So Jimmy Lake was the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator in 2024. Spent 1 year there before Jeff Ulbrich became the defensive coordinator in 2025. And with Kevin Stefanski coming in as the new Falcons head coach, as the Falcons move on from Raheem Morris, Jeff Ulbrich will remain as the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. He did a really good job there. That's why he's being retained. But Jimmy Lake, the former defense coordinator, what did he have to say about Zack Robinson? He said Zack Robinson is a brilliant football player. He has a great demeanor, and he's a common influence. So he's a very common influence, especially you talked about when times aren't going too well, when the waters get tough, when the waters get rough, when you're coming off of a bad game or overall bad performance, when you're going through a stretch of losing possibly. He is a calming presence, a calming influence inside the quarterback room and for the entire offense. And he knows offensive ball, and he's going to make, he says, Jimmy Lake says he's going to make defenses pay for their mistakes, essentially. So good stuff there, but here's some bad stuff about Zack Robinson. It comes from former quarterback Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner, he saw the Week 8 game versus the Atlanta Falcons versus the Miami Dolphins. It was in Atlanta. The Dolphins actually won that game. And he says that he had a long list of tweets about that game, but he says Zack Robinson's offense looked predictable, it looked boring, and it was difficult overall to watch. So that's not, overall, that's not what you want to hear. That's not what Bucs fans want to hear from their new, about their new offensive coordinator. But Kurt Warner, he says Zack Robinson's offense, it's predictable, it's boring, and it's hard to watch. So that's overall not good stuff there. Now, it was a bad performance against the Dolphins, but and a lot of Falcons fans, of course, as I mentioned earlier, they wanted Zack Robinson to be fired. Kurt Warner wasn't on board with firing or moving on from Zack Robinson. He believed that, he's a young play caller overall. He was in his second season as offensive coordinator, and there's still room for improvement. These guys are not finished products. Kurt Warner talked about there's room for them to improve and make their craft overall more effective and more efficient in their play calling duties. All right, so The last thing that I want to talk about before I get to my grade is Zack Robinson, what he looks for in a quarterback. And he talked a lot about what he looked for in a quarterback in his introductory press conference when he joined Atlanta in 2024. This was at the time, to understand the context, the Falcons had just hired Raheem Morris, just hired Zack Robinson as the offensive coordinator, Jamie Lake as defensive coordinator. They didn't have a quarterback, of course, on the roster. In that offseason and free agency, of course, that's where they go sign Kirk Cousins. And then the draft, they go get Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. But there was no quarterback. So essentially, the media want to know, what are you looking for? Raheem Morris is a defensive play caller. He's a defensive mind. You're in charge of the offense, just like he's going to be in charge of the offense here in Tampa. What are you looking for in your quarterback? He wants his quarterback to be the most competitive guy in the room. He wants his quarterback to have mental and physical toughness, be able to think, have a high mental capacity. He wants his quarterback to be accurate. That's really important as a quarterback, of course. Dante Culpepper, I got a chance to talk to you a few months ago, talked about if he was a general manager, he's looking for his first, his franchise quarterback. Accuracy will be a big part of that. And of course, Dante Culpepper mentioned leadership. If you want to hear that interview, go to the Frozen Pirate podcast and go look for the Dante Culpepper episode. My buddy Louie does tremendous work over there. A lot of times I go over on Wednesdays or Thursdays or Tuesdays sometimes to join the show. Really good stuff there. Louie knows ball. Zack Robinson wants his quarterback to have a inventory of throws, so not just one type of dimensional quarterback, to have a variety of throws at his disposal. He wants his quarterback to have pace. He wants his quarterback to have touch. He wants him to be poised in the pocket. He wants his quarterback to be, overall have competitive greatness. And he wants his quarterback to be a type of guy that wants the ball in crunch time moments. When the game's on the line, he wants his quarterback to be a guy who thrives in those opportunities, doesn't fall or fold under pressure. Pressure makes diamonds or burst pipes. He wants his quarterback, of course, to make diamonds and not burst pipes. But overall, that is what Zack Robinson looking for in a quarterback. Spent time with Baker Mayfield, of course, in LA. Baker Mayfield wanted him here in Tampa. To me, this is a C- hiring, or I'll go C. Let's go with a C overall. Okay, this is a C grade hiring for me. The offense, as Kurt Warner says, it can be predictable at times. I know a lot of Falcons fans were angry at how committed he was to the run. Is that bad? When it works, it works. When it doesn't, you're going to get a lot of heat for it. You're going to get a lot of backlash for it. But overall, I said that, in the last episode, that the next offense coordinator, ideally, he would be an experienced NFL offensive play caller, and he would have spent some time with Sean McVay and that LA Rams team and learn from Sean McVay and be molded by that Sean McVay offense, which to me is the best in the entire NFL. So to me, this is a C hiring. This hiring is going to be really, really important for Todd Bowles' future, of course. If Zack Robinson doesn't work out as offensive coordinator this year, that is going to be likely it for Todd Bowles in Tampa. Todd Bowles would rather be, the Buccaneers will part ways with him, or he decide to retire, but the Todd Bowles show in Tampa will be over. And also remember quickly that the contract for Baker Mayfield is over at the end of the season. The contract comes to an end. This is his final year of his contract in 2026. And we talked about what Zack Robinson looking for in a quarterback. And maybe this season I'm going to have draft content called The Search. Stay tuned to the channel, of course. But maybe, this is a very weak draft class for quarterbacks. But maybe in the later rounds, the Buccaneers can likely bring somebody in and, help develop them. And if Baker Mayfield doesn't work out, you at least have a guy in the quarterback room that can possibly is cheap and can possibly fill in for one season, be a bridge quarterback, or potentially develop into a starting quarterback in this league with the right people around him. I'm not moving on from Baker yet, but you always want to make sure that you have security at that position. If Baker doesn't work out and he doesn't show you that he can be a 50, 55, $60 million quarterback, you do have a young quarterback in the waiting with whoever you pick at in this year's draft. So I think that's important in terms of what Zack Robinson is looking for in a quarterback, because he will have some influence, not overall. It's the Todd Bowles and Jason Light show, of course, when it comes to the draft, but he'll have some influence with who his quarterback will likely be. And with all those things we talked about, Baker Mayfield, when healthy, fits that mold of what Zack Robinson looks for in an NFL quarterback. That's all I have for you guys here today. Thank you guys for watching. I'm your host, Danny Morales, signing out. Bye-bye.